Just whether to prophesy or to preach or to supplicate or to sing. So does that mean that we have people who stand up and predict the future? Is that a part of church? In the New Testament, it says that they came and they prophesied often. Does that mean they all gathered and people predicted the future? No, it means they spoke by inspiration or they taught by inspiration. So the idea that it's predicting the future, you will find, came out of the corruption that Ezra forced on Israel. Because in the surrounding areas, there were those who peeped and muttered, those who had familiar spirits, and those whose purpose was to show they had spiritual power by their ability to predict the future. And in the Levitical law, it actually says, in more than one place, that if a prophet comes among you and he gives you a sign and it does not come to pass, you must kill him. So he's not a true prophet unless he can predict the future. And yet, there's nothing in the definition of the word prophet, prophesy, prophesying, prophecies, no forms of that word in a definition in Hebrew has any mention of predicting the future. So, as we enter into this study on prophecy, we're going to learn about the future. We're going to learn about the present. But that's not why they did it. That's not why they're writing it. Now, I want to read to you something in Numbers, just to give you a feeling for this. I'll give you the reference. This is Numbers 11, 27 through 29. And there ran a young man and told Moses and said, Eldad and Medad do prophesy in the camp. So are they standing up in the camp and saying, I predict a certain date or this is going to happen? No, they're not doing that. And Joshua, the son of Nun, the servant of Moses, one of his young men, answered and said, My lord Moses, forbid them. And Moses said unto him, Enviest thou for my sake? Now listen to this. Would that all the Lord's people were prophets. Not just men, maybe even not just adults. And that the Lord would put his Spirit upon them. So Moses knew it was to teach or to speak by inspiration. And he wished everybody could speak and teach by inspiration. Can't you as a mother teach your 2-year-old by inspiration? Can't the Spirit lead you? Can't you preach? Can't you teach? Can't you sing a song? Can't you shouldn't whatever you do be influenced by inspiration? That's prophecy. So we have a huge war against prophecy because of why the prophets prophesied. Why did they speak by inspiration? What motivated them to do that? So there are 3 kinds of prophecy. There is universal prophecy. And there's more than one kind of that, more than one flavor sort of, but there's a universal prophecy. And what that is when somebody speaks by inspiration and that inspired commentary can fit many different time periods and many different situations. And so it's universal. And it's usually scattered. Universal prophecy is usually quick, short stories. So it goes from talking about this, and Isaiah is like that in some places. It talks about the drunkards of Ephraim. And it tells all about how they were at the head of a fat valley, which means they could have achieved greatness, but they're like a wilted flower, so now they can't achieve greatness. Well, that's true with lots of different time periods in the world. Lots of people have been on the cusp of greatness and failed to achieve it. So you see, and then he goes over and he talks about the Palestinians. It says, gird yourselves, and ye shall be no nation. Gird yourselves, gird yourselves. And they've done that. They've bombed and fought and sent rockets and done everything they possibly can to be a nation, and they can't be a nation. Well, they're not the only ones that have done that. There's people all over the world throughout history who have girded themselves, and yet they could not be a nation. So a universal prophecy, it fits a lot of people in a lot of different times, and it's a voice from God to all those times and to all those people. And if they hear the Spirit, they will know it's futile to keep bombing and fighting. The Lord is telling us, don't do that, because it's not going to work. We're not going to be a nation. So there's that. Then there's conditional prophecies. And conditional prophecies are inspired teaching that what do these particular conditions mean to you? How will they affect your life? And those conditions, conditional prophecies, when they speak about those, they're saying, if you continue to worship other gods, you continue to have fornication, you continue to not feed the poor and not take care of the widows and the orphans, this will happen to you. He told Noah that in your pseudepigrapha on the account of Noah in the Jubilees, that those who shed the blood for blood sacrifice, even animals, which they'll be responsible for the lives of all the animals, or if you shed the blood of man, your seed will be cut off, your future generations will be cut off from the earth. Well, when that condition's present, that's going to be the result. And so a conditional prophecy is saying to you, when you allow, or when you're confronted with, or you're surrounded by these conditions, this is going to be the result. Okay? And then the third one is there's directed prophecies. And this series is going to be exclusively about directed prophecies. And directed prophecies are only limited to one time and one place in history. So when in chapter 53 of Isaiah, like I'm saying, they're not all just cut and dry. Isaiah gave a directed prophecy, and he said, unto us a son is given, and a child is born. That only happened once. Understand that? So a directed prophecy is directed specifically at an event that you need to prepare for, like she's talking about, that's only going to happen once. It happens that end-time prophecies are the once. The most prophesied event in the world through all of the world's history is now before us. Our time now. And so that's why the Lord wanted me to do this. The only way you will connect to a prophecy is for you to be motivated to read and study it with the same motivation that the prophet had to say to speak it. Did you understand me? Are you reading the prophecy because you're afraid? Did the prophet write it because he was afraid? No. Did he write it to make you afraid? No. God doesn't inspire people to do that. So as long as you're reading a prophecy because you're afraid, then you won't connect with that prophecy and you won't understand it. If you read prophecy because you want to know how to prepare and store food or weapons or clothing or a way of surviving, you won't understand it. I know of no prophet who said, store food up. I don't know any of them that said any temporal preparations. The inspiration is all spiritual. It doesn't mean you shouldn't prepare and store some food up. What I mean is, if you're looking for how to prepare to survive by reading a prophecy, you're going to miss what is said. You're not going to get it. Because he didn't write it for that. That person didn't write that, didn't teach that. Inspiration didn't come to him for that reason. It came to teach you how to prepare yourself to be of service, to Enoch said, in the days of this prophecy where it applies, especially directed prophecies. Especially directed prophecies. So, the end times and the conditions of end time prophecy has been designated by God from very old times, and it's even mentioned in the scriptures that God has set this in motion from ancient times. I'll read you one of those in a little bit. So, the first question you have to ask as you approach to read the book of Revelation or Isaiah, we're going to do Isaiah, we're going to do Ezekiel, we're going to do Daniel, we're going to do John the Revelator, we're going to do Gocharim the first, who wrote the War Scroll and the Cave 11 material. We're going to do First Enoch in the, not our book of Remembrance of Enoch, but First Enoch in the Dead Sea Scrolls, and we're going to do the protection tablet and the little book of John. Those 7 things. Okay? And there's been a war against them. And so the first question you ask, if you're going to read Isaiah, and you search Isaiah to find out why did he write this, that's where you start. Because until you know why he wrote it, you don't know why to study it. Understand me? You can't understand it unless you know why, what was on his mind. Why did he write this? And as you start looking at that, it's amazing how clear it is. Isaiah and Ezekiel had the same reason to write their ministry, the same inspiration. They were separated vastly from their circumstances. Isaiah was a prophet, 160 some years before the exile. He was a prophet that dealt with the sins of Israel and what they were going to mean. He was one who had on his heart a feeling of why he was writing related to Israel because of their failure. Ezekiel was a writer in the exile who knew firsthand what would happen to them if they didn't listen to Isaiah. So the two had very vastly different environments in which they wrote, but they had the very same reason to write. And so their prophecies interlock in a way that is going to be amazing. And as I go through this, I'm going to read some verses in Isaiah, then I'm going to go and show you the connection with Ezekiel. And I'm going to go back and read some more in Isaiah, and we're going to go back to Ezekiel. So you can see both of them prophesied came from an amazing position. And if you can understand the position they came from, you will feel their prayers in their desperation, in their closet where they went to pray, you will feel their heart. Because those two prophets realized that nothing short of a huge destroying army could cleanse Israel. So as Ezekiel wrote about Gog, who lived in a place called Magog. And Isaiah wrote about the Assyrian, which is exactly the same person as Gog. All right? And they both dealt with what it would take to cleanse Israel and the grief they felt as they looked for answers, and the only answer was a huge army with death and blood to rip away from them what was imposed on them by Ezra. Finally, and to know who Anokised was. And so, as we read those, they're going to tell you who Anokised is. Because that's the result of the cleansing. And you will find that it was very easy for Isaiah to prophesy Christ, because Christ spent his whole life trying to teach his whole ministry. The whole point of his ministry, all the time he's on the earth, was to teach you who Anokised was. He was cleansing Israel in his ministry. That was what he was trying to do. The same exact thing that was on Christ's heart was on the heart of Isaiah and Ezekiel. They were his companions. And so there's others that were the same way. But those two we're going to deal with. So unless you know why the prophet, whatever prophecy we're working with, why they did it, and you adopt the same reason for studying it, then you will understand their prophecy and it will have the intended effect in your life. Okay. So there has to be a special kind of component in this study that will allow you to overcome all of the opposition that's come against prophecy. And you don't realize, I'm sure, people don't realize all the things they've internalized in their hearts that have impeded what the prophecy's purpose is in their life. So we're going to weed those out. This is going to be a very intense study. It's going to be detailed. There's going to be hundreds of references. You're going to have to put yourself into it, take extensive notes, and do something with it if the prophecies we're going to study are going to be effective in your life for Him. All right? So, Dr. Schofield was a famous, probably the most eminent Bible scholar in my lifetime and before. And I have a copy of his 1917 Schofield Study Bible. They put out a 100-year anniversary in 2017, and I got a copy. And he wrote in there himself. The later editions of the Schofield Bible has other people writing the footnotes and the introductions and the explanations, the commentaries, and so forth. But he wrote the 1917 one himself. And he said, "Doubtless, much which is designedly obscure to us in the book of Revelation will become clear to those for whom it was written as the time approaches." He didn't understand it. This great Bible scholar didn't understand it, and he said, perhaps we can assume that whoever this was written for will understand it when the time approaches. The time has approached. All right? We're here. So, what will we do to understand it? All right. Because the Holy Spirit is the only source for inspired teaching and inspired speaking, these prophecies have a way of blending together that will be very helpful for you to experience. Some of them explain the problem very, very eloquently, and they pass over the solution just in passing. And if you just read that, it's very discouraging, because they're explaining the problem and they're going to mention, well, it'll be the day of salvation, but they never illuminate that word. They just keep going with the tragic consequences of behavior. And there's other prophets that write the solution, and they just pass over the problem. And when the two of those come together, and you actually understand this is the problem, now I understand what the solution is pointed toward. Because if you just get the solution and you don't understand the problem, you say, well, you don't understand, why are we doing this? Why is this preparation required? Why should I feel these things? But when you have those two prophecies together and you understand, that's what I'm talking about, between Ezekiel and Isaiah, then you understand, oh, Ezekiel said this, and he illuminated the problem in glowing terms, which could scare the wits out of you if you didn't have the light at the end of the tunnel where this problem is headed. All right? So I'll read you the problem. And I want to help you understand this now. I'm going to read something that Gokarim the first, Akkab, mother called him Shub, or what he wrote. Here, I want just a little bit to show you where we're going. His father, Gokarim's father, and somebody will tell me his name, Shinab, he lived during the time of the Maccabees. And the Maccabees lived during the time when the temple was corrupted with sacrificing a hog or a pig on the altar. And that was, to the temple religion, that was the ultimate insult. And it rose such anger that the Maccabee family, I don't know if that was their name, it means the hammer, if that might have been their name or just what they're called, but they rose up and they overtook and they cleansed the temple. And I think is Hanukkah, where they light the lights, is the oil, that's a celebration of that restoration of the temple. Well, Shinab didn't believe in a temple. He believed in a tabernacle. And he didn't believe in sacrificing, blood sacrifice. He believed what David taught, that a clean heart and a contrite spirit is a sacrifice unto the Lord. And so he was caught up in controversy, and it might have been why they lived in Yabus, which is a distant place, to avoid the controversy of being in the city and not agreeing with all the fervor and all the emotion that was being spent there in this reclamation of the temple. So, as a young boy, growing up, because he was born right about that time, he was born probably 152 BC or 150 BC, right about that time. And so with his father's interest and highly motivated emotion about what was going on in Jerusalem, he was raised with that idea that there's a problem, and his dad understood there's this problem. So that's what he heard about. And I'm sure Shinab didn't know the solution. He didn't know the solution to what to do with that temple. Christ came and dealt with that. And that's why he said, not one stone of this building will be one upon another. Because he was dealing with the solution to that corruption of a temple. And so Shinab, Gokuram I was very influenced so that he could describe the problem very well. That's what he was taught. Are you understanding now how I'm trying to help you understand why did he write this? He wrote this, what I'm going to read to you. This is in the War Scroll. It's in the introduction. It's page 170 and 171 of your DuPont Summer Scene Writings from Qumran. All right, and this, we believe that this was written by Gokuram I. Okay, he wanted people to know clearly the problem that they would face now at the end times. And the whole War Scroll follows this introduction. What I'm doing is just reading his introduction. It's just a page and a half, describing the problem. And he lightly touches on a solution. He basically says there will be a solution, but he doesn't tell you anything about what it is. All right? So here's a person who really knows the problem. He's trained in that. He's influenced by that. He's raised in that environment. Now he's going to tell you the problem. Okay. First he says, and after this war, the nation shall go up from there. What he's talking about, all the wars preceding this, the Civil War, the War of 1812, the First World War, the Second World War, the Vietnam War, all the wars that have been in our past before now, today. And the king of the Kittim shall enter Egypt. The Kittim is a word, and I'll be giving you this later when we run into this word in the scriptures, that word of prophecies. The word Kittim, I'll give you the numbers later, but it actually means somebody who's looking for an opportunity to throw something at you. That's the actual meaning of the word Kittim. So most of the Bible scholars translate it as the enemy, and most of them apply it to the Romans because they think that this was written to apply to Romans. They don't realize it was written to the end times. All right? So, and when it says Egypt, the definition of Egypt is the world. Egypt was the stereotypical idea of what the world was to the Hebrews, with all of its riches and far trade and severe leadership and the glories of their temples and all their religion and all their mysticism. And so it says, and the king of the Kittim shall enter Egypt. Now, I'm going to go over this in detail and do a commentary on it, so I won't explain everything now, but I'm giving you an example of his desire to teach you and describe the problem. And in his time, he shall set out the prey to violent fury, to battle against the kings of the north. You'll find out that the king of the Kittim is the king of the south, because he's battling against the king of the north. It isn't a direction. It isn't Israel in the north and Jerusalem in the south. It's conservative versus liberal. The king of the Kittim who enters Egypt is a conservative one. He's going to fight against the kings of the north and what they stand for. All kinds of immorality and so forth, but he's going to stand for love of nation and love of people, love of family, love of religion, love of freedom. Okay? All right? And he shall battle against the kings of the north, and in his anger He shall seek to destroy and wipe out the horns of his enemies. Horns means their ability to accomplish their agenda. He's going to try to stop their plan, their agenda, where they're going, what they want. And there shall be a time of salvation for the people of God, and the hour for all the men of his lot. That's all he says about the solution. He just tells you there will be a solution. He doesn't say what. It'll be the hour of the dominion of the men of his lot, of Anokised, and of final destruction for the lot of Belial. And there will be he's giving you now he's describing the problem. And there shall be immense confusion for the sons of Japheth. And Babylon will fall without the help of any man. And the dominion of the Kittim shall vanish, and the wickedness may be crushed without a remnant, and without any survivor for all the sons of darkness. Okay? And on that day, when the Kittim shall fall, now he's going to describe the problem better than what he just said. This is a little introduction to the next section. He's telling you the problem. And on the day when the Kittim fall, there shall be battle and rude slaughter before the God of Israel. Not before all men, or not before nations, before the God of Israel. I'm giving you commentary I should be waiting for. For this is the day appointed by him from former times. Remember I said he's pointing it to a very specific time. For the war of destruction for the sons of darkness. And on this day shall approach for tremendous slaughter, and the congregation of gods, which is the Urkadeshi, and the assembly of men. And the day of him who is, which is Anokised, and you'll find that in the footnote, the sons of light and the lot of darkness will battle together for the power of God. They're not fighting for anything else. Not fighting for evil powers. They're not fighting for having a nation. They're not fighting for control of the world. They want to be gods. The evil ones want to be gods, and the righteous ones want God to be God. Amid the tumult of a vast multitude and the cries of gods and men. And it shall be a time of distress for all the people redeemed by God, you, and among all their afflictions, there will have been nothing to equal it from its sudden beginning until its end in final redemption. The distress that his redeemed will feel will be unequaled in the history of the world. It's a big problem. I mean, how could a problem get bigger to tell you right here? And on the day when they shall battle against the Kittim, he shall save them from slaughter in this battle. Doesn't say how. He mentions there will be an answer. For 3 lots, the sons of light shall be strongest through overthrow and godliness. For 3 lots, the army of Belial will make answer and beat into retreat the lot of God. And a battalion of infantry shall melt the heart, but the power of God shall strengthen the heart of the sons of light. And in the 7th lot, the mighty hand of God shall subject the sons of darkness to all the angels of his empire, and to all the men of his lot. So there is an eloquent description of the problem. And if you understand why he wrote that his heart was filled with what was going on in Jerusalem, and how will we ever fix this? He didn't know. So then you go read in Isaiah. Oh, I love Isaiah. And Isaiah, all of his writings were talking about the solution. It's Isaiah 6. Just a minute now. Isaiah 5, 26 through 29. I'm going to read 6 in a minute. It's so wonderful. The solution is so wonderful. When Isaiah, I'll tell you about Isaiah. I saw this with the Urim. When he wrote these words, was looking at you. Really. He saw you. And I want what he wrote, looking at you, to be what you do and who you are. And he will lift up an ensign to the nations from far, the tablet of Gabriel. From far, because it's just a little podunk us that brought it. And he will hiss unto them from the end of the earth. And actually the word hiss means whistle. He will whistle unto them from the ends of the earth with his ensign. And he will say, Behold, they shall come with speed swiftly, you. None shall be weary, nor stumble among them. None shall slumber, nor sleep. Neither shall the girdle of their loins be loosed, nor the latchet of their shoes be broken. Whose arrows are sharp, and all their bows bent. Their horses' hoofs shall be counted like flint, and their wheels like a whirlwind. Their roaring shall be like a lion. They shall roar like young lions. Yea, they shall roar, and lay hold of the prey, and carry it away safe, and none shall deliver. And then he points it right today to us. And in that day they shall roar against them like the roaring of the sea. And if one look unto the land, behold darkness and sorrow, and the light is darkened in the heavens thereof. Pointing to the time when the sun will hide its light and the moon will be darkened. He's pointing it right to the time of tribulations, right to now. He's saying this because when the world reads this one and they understand the problem, without his prophecy, they will be completely disabled. When Babylon falls, and when this Gog and Magog situation happens, and when the cries of gods and men are mingled, and there's great slaughter and all the stuff they're saying here, in a time of distress unequaled in world history, who will not be disabled? What are we going to eat? There's no electricity. What are we going to do? There's no communication. There's no transportation. There's no way to heat our houses in the winter. There's no way to have new clothes. What will I do if I don't have winter boots and it's 10 below zero outside? Do I wrap my feet with rags? What do I do if I'm sick and there's no doctors? How will I ever see my family again? They live only 100 miles away. I'll never get there. What are they going to do? Are they going to say what it says in Isaiah 6? And I also heard a voice of the Lord saying, Whom shall I send? And who will go for us? Then said I, Here am I, send me. So, when you know the solution, and we read his solution in depth, and I do a commentary on it, and you understand where Gog is going, where this cleansing of Israel is going to, why it's happening, how it's going to happen, you'll be ready. You're not going to be scared. You know that God's going to take care of you. You know where this is. When war breaks out, shortly in our world. When you understand these prophecies, you're not going to be afraid. You're not reading them because you're afraid. You're going to read them because you want to say, in the time of greatest distress the world has ever known, when the Lord needs you, because somebody is so totally disabled and so disoriented and so in despair that they don't even want to live. And Isaiah said, and life and death will escape them, it says in John and Revelations. You'll be there to lay hold of the prey and carry away safe. And the evil can do nothing about it, and none shall deliver. So how are you going to get in that condition? How are you going to be able to rise up above the chaos and the violence and the fear and the hunger and the distress and maybe injuries? How are you going to rise above that? Is because you're going to know where it's going. You're not only going to know the solution, you're going to see that the solution takes place. Are you hearing me? He was looking at you. You were his hope. You are his hope. Not just him, but our lovely Savior's hope. And so, you've got to be ready to give yourself to this study and to look them up, these things up, and to I'm going to give you homework, and you can't take it lightly. You got to be ready, and you all can be ready in your own way. You all can be ready in your own circumstances, and your emphasis has to be getting ready to say, as the smoke is rising and the screams and fear are shouting, "Here, my Lord, send me." I'll go. I'll do it. I won't measure the cost. I'm not afraid. So you can't be distracted by worrying about provisions and things like that to the point that that's all you think about. We got to do it. I've been working hard at the temporal stuff for years, getting ready for now. But that can't be what you're after. What you're after is in your quiet place, when we start studying, say we're going to start with Ezekiel, ask God fervently, God, help me to know and to feel why Ezekiel is writing this. Why did he write this? What is he trying to say? What does he want me to do? Why did he give this treasure, this gift, and why was it preserved and saved for now? Why was the understanding of it saved for now that Dr. Schofield couldn't grasp? He says, I assume that those to whom it was written will understand it when the time arrives. So here we are, and here we go. So I'm going to start with Ezekiel, and I'm going to give you next time. Have I still got a little time? How much time? What time is it?
You've been talking for 48 minutes.
I can go a little bit longer. In this introduction, I also, if I had time, I wanted to share. I've talked about what Achab and Isaiah and Ezekiel, their circumstances to contribute by their prophecies. I want to give you a little bit of background about myself so you'll understand where I'm coming from as I share this, besides the idea that I want you to turn into young lions and roar and lay hold of the prey. So I want to tell you a story. Some of you have heard this before, but many may not have. I had a summer, I'm not going to tell you about the first part of this, but I had a summer where the Lord appeared to me, and that's all written in the little blue book on Jesus' view of his Father. But the next summer, I had an experience again, I've told that before too, where I gave my life to the Lord. But I stayed there after that initial contact when I gave my life to him. And I felt like I knew the things, I didn't know specifically, but I knew the kind of things he was asking me to do as much as a 15-year-old could know, and I wanted to get ready. So I started studying the scriptures, and I read a scripture that says that in the end times, the prophecies of Isaiah will be of great worth to the house of Israel and to his people. So I thought, whoa, if the Lord's asking me to do these things, I didn't know exactly what I was going to do, but they felt big and important. So I'll read Isaiah, and then it'll be of great worth to me, and then it'll help me get ready. So I went to read Isaiah, and it didn't mean anything to me. And I was really, really disappointed. I just knew I had to understand Isaiah. So I tried reading it and reading it. I skipped around in it. I thought maybe, well, what are the parts of it I can understand? I can understand nothing. It was just completely foreign to me. I never read Isaiah before. I was 15 years old. So I decided, well, Lord, you and I have this agreement that I'll do this for you and you'll do this for me and so forth. So I'll make a deal with you. I'll keep my promises to you, and I know you're going to keep your promises to me. And you've said, knock and it shall be opened. You've said, if any man lack wisdom, let him ask of God. Okay, so you've said that by the Holy Spirit I will teach you all things. So you made those promises to me, and I know you'll keep them. So I'm going to ask you to teach me with your Spirit how to understand Isaiah. So I took my old Bible out, and I opened it up to chapter 1 of Isaiah. I went out into the woods where the Lord had visited with me, and I laid it out like this, facing the Lord on the ground. Okay? And I said, 4 days from now, I'm going to come, and I need time to prepare, Lord, but I'm going to come 4 days from now, and I want you to explain Isaiah to me. So I went back, and I took my Bible home, and I repented for everything I could think of. I didn't help Grandma weed the potatoes, and I didn't do this and that. So I did everything I could. The next day I came back, and I laid my Bible out again. I said, Lord, 3 days from now, I'm going to come out here. I still got more things to repent for. I did that every day until finally my heart was full. I didn't feel ready, but I knew I would never be ready. He just had to figure out a way to do it anyway. I took my Bible out and I laid it on the ground. I said, Lord, here I am. You know my question. And the Lord said, it'll be too hard. I can't do it. Hard for me. Too hard for you. I said, Lord, you promised, and I don't care how hard it is. I got to know. So he picked up the book, and he started reading. And he didn't explain anything. He just read. And he didn't read chapter 1. And he read 52 chapters. From chapter 2 to 52. Maybe that's 53 chapters. And I always wondered why he quit when he got to chapter 53. And that was the part that I couldn't have lived through, because it's about Christ's suffering. And I started wishing he would quit, and I thought probably I was going to die at chapter 44. I was so filled. As he read it, I understood every word he was reading. He didn't even have to say it. I didn't look at the book, and I don't know if he read every single word it said just like it says. I assume he did. And I could feel the meaning of it. I mean, just like paragraphs were spoken in my heart to every word just about. And it was just explosive in my soul. I could see into eternity. I could see everything he was saying. It was just overpowering. And I thought, I was going to say, oh, Lord, please quit. And I remembered, oh, I told him I don't care how hard it is. So he kept going and going, and finally I just had to say, Lord, I can't, and he quit. And so I didn't know what had happened there exactly. I mean, it was so big, and I was so young, it took me a long time to process it. I went and told my dad that God picked up my Bible and read to me out of Isaiah. And he made an appointment with a psychiatrist. My older brother, who's big, he came to get me to take me to that appointment. My brother just got in the kitchen door, and he swelled up in that door jamb, just went whoop, like this and took up the whole door. And he says, Dad, you're going to have to go through me because I believe him. So Dad says, well, I don't want to fight with my sons, and he dropped it. But that had an impact on me. If I tell anybody what God told me there, what I felt, they're going to think I'm crazy. They're going to medicate me. So I wouldn't breathe a word about that until I was 45 years old. And my mother asked me to teach Isaiah to the group of women who established this community. Now, Benny's mother was one of them that was in that group. And Rita was one later involved in that same time period. And so I decided that I would try it. Maybe these women won't think I'm crazy because they're all asking me to do it, and they've heard a little bit about it from my mother, so I did. And they didn't understand it. And the problem was me, because it was so big to me and so clear to me that I couldn't comprehend what it would take for them to feel the same thing. I thought just reading it, it was just read to me and it was explosive. Well, I could just read it and everybody go, oh yeah. But they would go, huh? They already read it. They didn't get anything out of it. I could just read it and didn't get anything out of it either. So they persuaded me to teach it on the radio every Sunday for a year, and I did 52 one-hour radio sermons on the radio, one for each chapter, for a whole year. And I still run across, and I tried to do some commentary, but even the radio made it hard to connect with the audience, see, because it was not personal. But I still hear every once in a while, there's a doctor in Lamoni, Dr. Black. He was a little kid during that time. And his mother faithfully, and his dad faithfully listened to those radio broadcasts, and they would tell me what it was meaning in their life. And so I at least had a little bit of contact that somebody liked it. So then we came to community, and I didn't really want to share it again. I shared it already, and it wasn't all that successful. So then we got to Urim. And then I began to see John the Revelator. I saw him on Patmos. I heard his prayers. I saw when he was born. I saw Christ's interaction with him. I saw Gokorham the first. I saw Isaiah. Remember, there's a chapter about Isaiah. I saw all those things with Urim, and then I began to understand how to explain this, how to put it together, and how the prophecies interlocked. And the things I've been talking to you about today. So I come with that background that's unique to be able to explain these prophecies. Because what God did for me, I learned as the years went by. Because when I would read Ezekiel, I could understand it the same way. He didn't read Ezekiel to me. What he did was he joined my spirit to the prophets, so I can feel with them. And that's what I'm trying to do with you. I'm trying to join you with them so you can feel with them. And that can be explosive in your soul the same way it was with me. So I'm using the same format, the same mechanism that God used with me, only I got to do a commentary, and he didn't because his spirit was strong and I'm nothing. So I have to do that. So that's what we're going to do. And this series, if it's successful, and I have every reason to believe it will be, will bring about the fulfillment of all of the succeeding high priest communities till the second coming. Starting with us. The reason why we are a community is not just so you can live and be happy and raise your kids and they can ride horses and you can have your food. That's good. That's good reason to be here. The reason we are a high priest community is for you to become those young lions who roar and lay hold of the prey. In the Lord's time of most desperate need, Lord, this is for you. Okay. Let's see. Want to have the song? I want to have comments first before we sing.
Probably.
All right. Any other questions about this? You're all going to need to get a Strong's. If you don't have a Strong's, you're going to need one. And if you have a Kobelski or a DuPont Summer, we'll eventually need that. And you'll need the Bible for John, the Revelator, and you're going to need the parts of the books of remembrance later on too. So I'll try to tell you ahead of time which ones you're going to need. We're going to start with the Bible and the Strong's for the next session. You may not be able to look things up during the time of the sermon, but I'm going to talk about how to use the Strong's next time. So you'll need it there so I can point it out and you can see what I'm talking about. It's not as simple as what you just see a word, look up a number, and you have the meaning. Sometimes there's some more complicated things where the Spirit has to lead you in order to use the Strong's in broader ways. And I can help you with that. So you'll need that next time. And if I were you, I would take prolific notes, because we're going to print this, but it could be months away, and we could already be in the thick of things by the time that happens. We may not get to print it, I don't know. And so you're going to need to be able to call to memory a lot of the stuff that we're talking about. And so if you take notes and they're organized, and book 1, book 2, whatever you do, so you can find your stuff instead of just scratching them at random, you know what I mean? Try to take organized notes and write what session it is, what the topic is, the scriptures we're going to cover, so you can go through your notes and get some benefit out of them later on.
When is the next session? When are you going to do the next session?
Am I going to preach each Sabbath for a while?
I think so.
Yes, please.
Yeah.
Better hit while caught.
Okay. I don't know how long it's going to take. but it could go 6 weeks, 8 weeks.
That's okay.
So, I could say something that you may not understand, but it's really heavy on me. I'm grieving that we have to have this series. Because what it means is the Lord's burden is going to be so big he can need all the help he can get. And I can't take my mind off how urgent it is that we have to do something about helping him. And I just wish this never came up. I wish all this evil never happened so he didn't have this and we don't have to do this. Is that hard to understand that? It seems hard to understand to me. So I'm excited about doing it. I want to do it, but I'm grieving because we have to. Anyway, all right. Any other comments? Or?